Hi there! So, Pokemon is one of those series that just about everyone knows. You could ask just about anyone who this fella is, and chances are they'd know who you meant. Now, the games that started all of this were Pokemon Red and Blue, or if you're in Japan, Red and Green. But late in these titles' developments, there was a catastrophic event, which meant that these games almost never went out into the world. What was this event? Well, let us find out. First off, a quick history. The year was 1990, a whole 6 years before Pokemon would eventually be released. Growing up, game designer Satoshi Tajiri had loved collecting bugs. Back then, the suburb in Tokyo where he lived was surprisingly rural, so there were bugs aplenty. Tajiri was fascinated by them, the way they moved, their habits. He would catch many of them and bring them home, until he noticed they started eating each other. This hobby of his, by the way, earned young Tajiri the nickname Dr. Bug. Now, as he started growing older, the area where he lived became steadily more urbanized, with trees being chopped and buildings being built. This dramatic change meant that most of the local bugs fled the area, or else ended up dying out. And so, all these years later, in 1990, the idea struck Tajiri of developing a game centered around this bug-catching concept. Now, it had only been a year since he and a few friends founded game development studio Game Freak. He decided that this would be a perfect game for them to work on together. Now, at the time, Tajiri had just been shown Nintendo's brand new handheld console, the Game Boy. When he heard about the link cable feature, which allowed data to be transferred between multiple systems, he struck upon another idea. What if the creatures players caught could be transferred between friends? And that's how he landed on the final concept of a monster trading game. The last piece of the puzzle came from none other than Shigeru Miyamoto, creator of Mario, Zelda, all that jazz. When he heard of Tajiri's monster trading idea, he suggested, how about creating different cartridges? There are different Pokemon on each cartridge, and people are willing to trade the Pokemon. Right, that settled it. Now it was time for development to begin. And so, over the next 6 years, the team of only 9 people gradually worked their way through the process of developing the game. To keep the studio alive financially, Game Freak took on a number of projects for other companies. Then, in their spare time, the developers could work on Pokemon, putting their creative energy into the game. According to developer Junichi Masuda, it was really because of that kind of teamwork that I think Pokemon, the original games, just came out to be as interesting and fun as they were. Now, as development began nearing completion, the team started to get worried. Pokemon, you see, was being developed for the Game Boy, but it was beginning to look like the system was dying. By this point, it had been a number of years since the console came out, and in Japan, the number of people playing games on this device was drastically falling. When the Game Freak developers told people they were working on a game for the Game Boy, they were told, "Really? You're working on a Game Boy game? That's not going to sell very well, don't you think?" However, having worked on the game for such a long time, the developers knew they had to press on and finish the thing. However, just around the corner lurked a huge problem. You see, nowadays you can develop a game using just about anything. A laptop, a tablet, heck, probably even the phone I'm writing this script on. But back then, not just anything could be used to develop a game. You needed some specialist equipment. For Game Freak, that took the form of these Unix computer stations called the Sun Spark Station. Now, as was customary for the time, these computers were a little unstable and crashed quite regularly. Usually that wasn't a big problem, but one day, about 4 years into development, there was a particularly bad crash. Now, the computer that crashed had all the data for the game stored on it, all the Pokemon and the main character. According to Junichi Masuda, the developers felt, oh my god, if we can't recover this data, we're finished here. And so Masuda and the gang all started desperately researching how to recover data from this device. He reached out to the company where he used to work, plus he asked for help from strangers using the early internet service provider NiftyServe. Since there wasn't a lot of information about their particular computer in Japanese, they looked through English books instead, feverishly trying to find the answer to their prayers. Thankfully, they did eventually manage to save all the data from the brink of the abyss. And the Pokemon games went on to be, well, hugely successful. You don't need me to tell you that. So the moral of the story is, Back up your data. Seriously, if you're watching this video right now without your data backed up, please do it. Please. Future you will be extremely appreciative, I promise. Hi there, thanks for watching to the end. If you found this video interesting, sharing it with your friends and esteemed colleagues is always appreciated. Plus, you can subscribe for more game dev stories. Okay, see ya, bye!